Okay, you've had a couple of weeks to play around with the website creator that you've chosen, the platform you've chosen. You have been asked to watch some tutorials and to try to figure things out. So at this point, you should be pretty comfortable and ready to start adding content to your site. So that's what we're doing this week. We're focusing on website content. And we'll be working with three different elements today, this week. One is reports. We're going to be looking at a couple different kinds of reports and creating a couple that you will eventually add to your site. You are going to be adding the content that you've already created for your home page and your about page, and you're going to add in relevant photos, videos, graphics, the things that will boost the interest level in your pages. You're also going to create that content or the contact page, which is just really adding your email address and phone number. I do want to make clear that because you are going to publish this site, that's the only way I'll be able to look at it. Please do not put your actual phone number or email address on the site unless you plan on actually using this site for the purposes of finding employment or running a business. And then, you want to have your actual information. But really, just to protect yourself, protect your privacy, keep creeps away, people from finding you that don't need to. As there are just a lot of unsavory characters out there. So, make the decision that you need to make, but I advise you, unless you're actually going to use this site, to not put the real contact information on your site. And then the last thing you're going to be doing is looking for a trade journal article. You were asked to read about those in your handbook, and now I'm going to ask you to actually look for one and do some work with that. So let's dive in and see what we're doing this week. Okay, we're focusing on informational reports. There are a few different kinds of reports, but we're going to focus on the informational reports this week, specifically directives and incident reports. But some of the others, and you read about some of these, or you were asked to read about some of these in your handbook. Others include field reports, progress and status reports, and meeting minutes, things like that. We are going to do something with the progress reports next week, but this week we're going to look at directives and incident reports. So we'll start with directives, although often it's the incident report that instigates a directive, but we're going to start with directives anyway. So directives explain policy or procedure. Like I said, often these policies and procedures are created in response to a particular incident, and you're going to be working with that scenario a little bit later on, but just for right now, sometimes we also have policies and procedures that aren't related to a particular incident. They're just to help maybe prevent incidents from happening or to make sure an organization runs smoothly. Whatever it is, it needs to be clear in the explanation of the policy or the procedure. It needs to give good, solid reasons for this policy or procedure. It can't just come out of the blue. It can't be left standing on its own. It needs to have support, and one of those areas of support is good reasons. It needs to give clear and compelling evidence, which can take the form of common sense arguments, numerical data, examples, specific examples, things that lend weight to the need for this policy. It needs to consider opposing arguments where that is necessary or where it's relevant to the particular policy. And if it's going to be taken seriously, the writer needs to come across as cooperative, moderate, fair-minded, and modest. So we have an example of a notice to employees, and we're not going to read through every single word of this, but this is a tobacco policy that minors have been trying to get tobacco products. It's dangerous, it's illegal. So here are the policies of what's supposed to happen if somebody comes in trying to buy tobacco products. You're supposed to request, the employees are supposed to request a valid photo ID. They have to make sure that the person is over 18 because state law prohibits the sale of tobacco products to people under 18, and if they do happen to be under 18, then the employees should refuse the sale. There's a copy of the law posted. The employees are supposed to read it carefully and make sure that they understand it and talk to the supervisor if they have any questions. And the consequence for not following the policy is that there will be disciplinary action. So the commentary, the annotations over here on the side, the writer, who is the owner of the convenience store, gives a clear explanation of the problem and the reasoning for the new policy. The employer shows respect for the readers and makes the directive more persuasive. The writer uses a polite but official tone because the new policy is a policy, not a request. And the directive specifies the penalty if people do not follow this policy, and if people have questions, they are directed to go to their supervisors. So it's a very straightforward directive. And notice it's not super long. Like, all of that information is packed into a pretty short piece of paper here. So directives don't need to be very long, even though they need to include reasoning and any background information that's necessary, the reasons, the evidence, and all of that. So you do have a short directive analysis activity. So if you click on that link, you will be taken to this document. So this particular document was sent to members of a Montana government department. When you read through this document, you'll see that it has to do with a state travel policy, and you are asked to read it carefully and then respond to these 3 questions. So this is not a super long activity, but this is one to help you think through some of the elements of a directive and the qualities of a directive, because you will be writing your own directive. So make sure that you take care in doing this activity. It is due on Blackboard. Your responses to these questions are due on Blackboard by noon on Thursday. All right. Excuse me. Another kind of report that you may come across in your workplace, you may have already come across this in your workplace, would be an incident report. Incident reports describe workplace accidents, health and safety emergencies, or equipment problems, things like that. They explain what happened, why it happened, and what the organization's response has been or will be. Often, a full incident report will contain tables, drawings, diagrams, photos, videos, whatever kinds of things are necessary to provide as evidence of the incident that happened. These incident reports can be 1 page or they can be hundreds of pages or anywhere in between. So just like the directive, we have some incident report examples. These examples you'll see first is a UNC one-page accident report form, and it just asks for the basic information of what happened and why, and when, what was the context, anything else they want to add, and then a signature and a date, and that is the extent of the report. And I'm sure that, if anyone wanted to or needed to, they could attach other information to this report, but it is kept very simple, which is really lovely. This next example, though, is simply the executive summary, which you guys have already had experience writing. This is the executive summary of a National Transportation Safety Board accident report on a 2012 head-on collision between two freight trains in Oklahoma. So this is just the executive summary. The full report was completed after several months of researching and writing. And because this executive summary is over 1 page long, you can imagine that the report itself was many pages, at least probably a dozen or more pages, and probably included photos and drawings, diagrams, tables, possibly video if that, if anything had been caught on video. There was probably a lot to that entire report. So this, there isn't anything you have to do specifically with these two items except review them. The executive summary does have several annotations that you should familiarize yourself with because they are, here it even says it's a 65-page report. So yeah, when I said at least a dozen, I was a little bit off there. It is a 65-page report, and these are just the first 1 1/4, 1 1/3 pages here. Right. And so, yeah, there aren't a whole lot of annotations, but there are a few that you should make sure you go and read. Familiarize yourself with those. The assignment that I was mentioning, and this will become content for your website. So one of your inside pages, you'll have this content there. You have a scenario here. As the manager of a busy downtown store, you have been informed by one of your employees that a customer tripped on the sidewalk and was injured. The customer tripped because the sidewalk was crowded with commuter bikes, which, for convenience, employees locked to street signs and benches versus using the designated racks around the corner. So that's the scenario there, and you have two reports to write. First, you're to write an incident report that explains what happened to the customer and why. Invent relevant details as needed. So you get to be kind of a creative writer here. You get to make up your own story to go along with this scenario. And then the second one, you are to, in response to this situation outlined in exercise 1, write a directive in the form of a memo defining a new policy. Employees commuting to work on bicycles must lock them to designated racks. Invent relevant details as needed. So this is a scenario for you. The bicycles, the person who trips and is injured. You make up the details about what the injury actually was, how extensive it was, what needed to be done in response to it, whatever all that incident report information, and then you create your second report is your directive in the form of a memo. Okay, so your directive, you're not writing an executive summary, you're not writing that full kind of report, you are writing in the form of a memo defining the new policy that employees commuting to work on bicycles must lock them to designated racks. Now, some of you are, well established in a career field. You have a job where perhaps you have incidents that happen and you have reports that have to be written and you have directives that are developed in response to an incident or because it will help the company, the organization operate effectively. If you have other scenarios from your real life job that you would like to substitute for this bicycle incident, please contact me as soon as possible so that I can be aware of that scenario and make sure that it definitely fits this assignment. And as long as it's approved, you can write about that instead of this particular scenario. But you have to contact me soon enough that I can make sure that it will work and approve it before you begin working on it. This is due on Monday, so you do have some time, but if you wait until the weekend, I'm not necessarily going to see your emails. Remember, I generally don't check emails after 5 or 6 p.m., and I do not check my emails on the weekends. So you'll need to, make sure you address this sooner rather than later. But I am happy to have you use real life, real work scenarios. But for those who don't have such things, here's one for you. Okay. Next thing we're working on is your website content. You've already written your homepage and your about page text, and you've already been asked to think about your name, like how you're going to set it up, the template that you're going to use, or if you're creating from scratch, what that's going to look like. So on your homepage, after you share that link with me, I should be able to go to that link and I should see that your name is displayed prominently, that you have a suitable logo that you've designed for yourself, that you have an interesting tagline about yourself. I should see your positioning statement. I should see your call to action. You should have relevant photos or videos or both, or relevant items of interest, and I should be able to get a clear sense of the site navigation. Even though you don't know yet maybe what exactly you will have for your inside pages, you should have a couple of pages that are just under development already there, so I can see that you've got space for those, that they are part of your design. But it's okay if they don't even have real page titles or labels or anything yet. Your about page, your story, the story of you and your interest in your career, your accomplishments, those things, that needs to be on your about page. And again, you want to add the relevant photos and videos, etc. And then I would like to see your contact page. We've already been over my warning about your email and phone number. So please, make the right decision for you about that, about what you put on there. And then if you want to have a contact form, you can add that as well. They're actually really easy to do, so it wouldn't be a bad idea to try that out, so you can get the experience with it if you don't have experience already, and it might boost up the quality and boost up those quality points on your overall project. All right, and then the last thing that you're going to be working with this week is a trade journal. Trade journals, you can find those through the GRCC library. If you have trouble with that, the librarians there are excellent and they love to help students. So, please either contact them online. You can do that through the GRCC website, or if you can go into the library, that's great too. But the librarians are wonderful and they love to help students. So, if you need help or you just want a second opinion about a trade journal, definitely check in with the librarians. And I'm sure those of you who are guest students have, the same opportunities to check in with your home institution's librarians as well. It doesn't matter to me which library you use, as long as you do have access to a trade journal that's related in some way to your career field. Maybe your career doesn't actually have its own trade journal, but there's something in a field that's related that you could find an article in. So choose one of the most recent issues, like maybe in the last year, maybe 2 years if you need to. Find an article that interests you in some way, because there's no point in doing this with an article that doesn't interest you, but something that's interesting to you, and you want to read that article carefully at least twice. I mean, usually I see like the first time through is getting the feel for the article. Many of us don't read trade journal articles on the regular, especially at this stage of your education, although some of you who may be more established in careers might have more familiarity with that. But a lot of us, it's not something we do on the regular, and so that kind of reading can be a little overwhelming, it can be a little intimidating, and it can be a little challenging to get used to. So I suggest reading it at least twice. The first time just to get the feel for it, the second time to go through and pick out the important things. And then I just want you to create an outline of the main points of the article. You're going to be using that outline next week. So this is only part 1 of the assignment. You'll be using it for part 2 of the assignment next week. And that will be one of the final items, next week's assignments, that you'll be putting onto your website, because then you're going to be submitting this website for real for the last final week assignment sort of thing, which is really coming up somewhat soon, because this is week 11 and we've just got 12, 13, and 14 left. So we're coming up close to the end here. All right, so that's your trade journal assignment. So you do have several things you're doing this week, but none of them should take an inordinate amount of time. You do want to, make sure you schedule out your time. You do want to make sure that you understand what is due and when. So for your reports, the directive analysis activity, I want you to have your answers to those 3 questions on Blackboard by noon on Thursday. And then that report assignment with the incident report and the directive is due by noon on Monday. Also, by noon on Monday, you need to have completed the home page, about page, and contact page on your website. You need to have published your site and sent me the link to the site. You can still make changes to the site after it's published, so you don't have to worry about that. But if it's not published, I'm not really going to be able to see anything on it. So I need you to publish it in order for me to look at it. You need to use the right submission field on Blackboard. So when you go in to submit your assignment, there's like a little tab that will say write submission. You want to click on that and then submit your link in the field that comes up, the text box that comes up when you click on that write submission. If you have trouble with that, please let me know. But again, make sure that you contact me early enough And just in full disclosure, just so you're aware, I do teach. I have a student that I teach from 9:30 to 10:30 on Monday mornings, so I am not available during that time to help you. So if you wait until the last minute, you might not be able to get this submitted on time. And then your trade journal, the outline of the article that you select is also due by noon on Monday on Blackboard. So those are your assignments. You do have several things due, but like I said, none of them should really take too long to do them. Your website stuff, you've got the content created, so it's really just adding it in to the template and adding in some photos and stuff, which you can change up the photos later if you decide the ones you have up this week are not the ones you want to stick with. You can put some up there kind of sort of relevant as placeholders if you're not quite ready or you run out of time to get those set. But just do your best to get those as finished as possible, because you will have other pages you have to put together next week and after that a little bit. Right. So if you have any questions, you have any concerns, please contact me. Again, don't wait till the last minute to start any of this. Don't wait till the last minute to contact me about any problems, because if you do, I'm not going to be able to help you in time. And believe it or not, I actually do want to help you when you have problems. So please reach out to me sooner rather than later, and I wish you all the best this week.